episodes include inflated self-esteem, decreased need for sleep, excessive talkativeness, flight or ideas of sense that thoughts are racing, easy distractibility, excessive involvement in pleasure or risky behaviors, and impairment in normal functioning. Also, hi guys. Women also now have a reason, not an excuse, to explain acting reckless on their period thanks to the DSM-5. Thank the Lord for the DSM-5, because we'd explain to our teachers in gym class like, I cannot do this, and they'd be like, yes you can. I know women who are pregnant that can do sit-ups and I'd be like, but I'm not them, and I'm in middle school. Get your life. It was recently added to the DSM-5, which is super beneficial to women's rights. This is black life, not women's rights. But, the fight is the fight. The fight is the fight. Even though it's a different fight, we all fight for a great cause. According to the DSM criteria of premenstrual dysphoric disorder, features of this disorder include the following. In the majority of menstrual cycles, at least 5 symptoms must be present in the final week before the onset of menses. 1. Marked affective lability, also known as mood swings. 2. Marked irritable or anger. 3. Marked depressed mood. 4. Marked anxiety and tension. The other one of the following symptoms must additionally be present to reach a total of 5 symptoms when combined with symptoms previously stated. 1. Decreased interest of usual activities. 2. Difficulty in concentrating. Excuse me, I feel like I'm being bit by mosquitoes. 2. Difficulty in concentration. 3. Lethargy, fatigability, lack of energy. 4. Marked change in appetite, overeating, or specific food cravings. 5. Hypersomnia or insomnia. 6. A sense of being overwhelmed or out of control. 7. Excuse me, the sun is in my eyes. 7. Physical symptoms such as breast tenderness or weight gain. Clinically significant distress or interference with work, school, usual activities, or relationships. Symptoms are not attributable to the effects of substance or another medical condition. Oh, Jesus. I really do feel like I'm getting bit out here, guys. I hope to God that not so much that you appreciate this, but you just see that, I'm really interested in informing and trying to get you guys to understand mental disorders, that it's not just something in your head. There's this saying, it's like telling a person with a mental disability or a mental disorder, to just get over it. It's like yelling at a deaf person, telling them to listen harder. Like, what? Manic episodes include inflated self-esteem, decreased need for sleep, excessive talkativeness. I said this already. Okay, so now we're going to talk about bipolar 1 and bipolar 2. Bipolar 1 disorder, alternations between full manic episodes and major depressive episodes. Facts and statistics of, get off of my laptop, of major depressive episodes. The average age of onset is 15 to 18 years when you can be considered to have bipolar 1 disorder. This can begin in childhood and tends to be chronic. Suicide is a common consequence of bipolar 1. Bipolar 2, alternations between major depressive and hypomanic episodes. Facts and statistics of bipolar 2. Average onset is 15 to 18 years old. This can begin in childhood and tends to be chronic, which we'll get to later. Suicide is a common consequence. 10% to 25% of cases progress to full bipolar 1 disorder. This tends to be chronic as well. I put alcohol on my legs now. According to DSM-5, the criteria summary for bipolar 2 disorder includes features such as presence or history of one or more major depressive episodes, presence or history of at least one hypomanic episode, no history of a full manic episode. Mood symptoms are not better accounted for by another mental disorder, and clinically significant distress or impairment of functioning. Now we're moving on to another mood disorder called cyclothymic disorder. This is the chronic that we were going to get to previously, the chronic condition that has been mentioned from before, chronic version of bipolar disorder. This must last for at least 2 years, 1 year for children and adolescents. When it comes down to it, we're going to talk about now worldwide lifetime prevalence. I cut myself climbing a tree. 16% for major depression worldwide. So 16% of the world at least, and these are just the people that report it. There are a lot of people that have shame in reporting that they have a mental disorder. I'm going inside. I can't do this. So a lot of people have shame mentioning that they have a mental disorder, and I'm here to tell you guys that there's no shame in saying I'm a human being with flaws. Where is the shame in that? I see no shame in saying, I need help because I'm not perfect. I need medicine because my brain isn't functioning normally. I would like to talk to a counselor because I have no one to talk to. My friends aren't really good friends, and my family doesn't listen to me, so I need to pay somebody to listen to me, which really does suck. But that's the case for a lot of people, and it's not the best way to express yourself to a perfect stranger who, is just not the best person to talk to. I'm not downing psychologists or people who study psychology, but I am saying a lot of people wish to talk to family members or have them listen to them, and it doesn't happen. My hair, it's really hot down here, so please forgive me. It's Christmas time, and I'm sweating balls down here. It's hot as Satan's balls down here. Dear God. Where were we? 16% for major depression. In America alone, where this is a first world country, in a free country where we are all at home and are to be brave, more than 40% of Americans suffer within themselves, have suicidal thoughts. So you can just close your eyes and imagine third world countries and islands and continents and territories that are less fortunate than America, and their homeless people are even less fortunate than the homeless people here, because the homeless people here can actually make a life for themselves. Not everybody has that opportunity, but Americans, no matter how poor you are, there's always that opportunity to progress. And I'm not saying everybody in the world has it or everybody in America has it, but the majority of people compared to other economically less fortunate countries have that. 6% globally have experienced major depression in this last year alone. So in this last year that just passed, an increase of 6% of people have reported they are suffering with a mood disorder or feeling suicidal. The sex differences within mood disorders and suicide. Number 1, females are twice as likely to have major depression over males. Second, bipolar disorders approximately equal affect males and females. So not all mood disorders, but bipolar specifically affects male and females, which is interesting to know. And 3, women are more likely to be in a depressive period than males. I wonder why. The prevalence of mood disorders, the other one was worldwide lifetime prevalence, not this one I'm about to talk about. Prevalence of mood disorders. This occurs less often in pre-pubertal children. 2, rapid rise in adolescence. And 3, adults over 65 have about 50% less prevalence than the general population. So I guess like when you're reaching half a century, you finally realize it's going to be okay, and somehow you kind of figure out your life and you decide to live it. On top of that, when you think about it, who lives to be 100 in a world like ours? Like, in a world like ours, think about the world that we live in. When you're 0 years old to 100 years old, that's 1 digit to 3 digits that we are, I would say, allowed to see. I will try and be as non-biased and try to use science, even though God made science, along with math, art, lunch, English. You know, that's just, I'm not going to pretend like science isn't made by God, like any other thing, because science can actually prove God. And before Darwin died, I think it was Darwin, he actually recanted his statements of evolution. Somehow people, well, we took the good from evolution and some people took the bad. I do believe in evolution in a sense, and so let's just keep going. Prevalence of depression seems to be similar across subcultures. So around the world, in different cultures, in different lands, if you're depressed, you're depressed. It looks the same in America, it looks the same in Haiti, it looks the same in Germany. Depression is depression. Young children typically don't show classic mania of bipolar symptoms. So if a child is bipolar, you can't really see it. 6, mood disorders may be diagnosed as ADHD. So going back to the previous statement, young children typically don't show classic mania or bipolar symptoms. This can be misinterpreted for children as ADHD, which is highly used misdiagnosis, and I feel as though psychiatrists don't pay enough attention to children, but we can get into that in another sermon. Number 7, children are being diagnosed with bipolar at increasingly high rates. So I guess between 6 and 7, in those last few seconds, the psychiatrist, figured out, oh, Tati's right. Depression in elderly are between 14% and 42%. So that means from when you were an adolescent and you suffered until 50, because that percentage was about how many people? 40% of Americans, and then the elderly. Anyways, the number had gone down from adolescents of depression suffering. Let's make up a number, say 40% of Americans, just Americans, suffer with bipolar or mood disorders. By the time you're 50, that number nationally drops to 14 or 42%. There is a co-occurrence with anxiety disorders along with the depression in elderly, and that less gender imbalance after 65 years of age. So that means by the time you're now 65, there's more of a balance in your brain than before, because remember, as you're growing up, your frontal lobe hasn't really fully developed. But that's like in your 20s, so give you another like 25 years, 30 years, you're good. Like, you're developed. Whatever you don't have, you don't have. Whatever you have, you have. Cultural differences exist. The Hopi say, and these are people, they're called Hopi, H-O-P-I. The Hopi say they are, hold on. The Hopi say they are heartbroken, and I get that. Instead of a different word saying, oh, I'm depressed, you say it for what it is. You don't make up a new word and just categorize everything. And no, I'm depressed because I'm heartbroken. I'm talking about me. Like, People have let me down so much. I've let myself down so much. I've counted on people so much, and I've counted on things until I really depended on God. Even though I am suffering with depression, I do believe God is the only one that hasn't let me down, and so He's my strength and my source. When I'm feeling depressed, I try and praise God as much as I can. And also, the Native American populations have 4 times the rate of depressive disorders as the general population. I was to find out exactly why. I'm not going to conclude or assume anything, so we can probably get to that in another video. However, these are the facts and statistics. Actually, I am going to conclude something, hypothesis. Being that this was their native land and they were spiritually connected to it, I can see why someone would be depressed. Like, that's like someone taking your house that you worked so hard for. You know, you prayed, you had kids in your house, your whole family's been in your house, and then a bunch of people who don't even look like you have their own spirits and tell you can't have your own spirit, you know? It's kind of like, if you don't understand that concept, as you're a kid growing into your own self and you're walking around freely, and a cop comes up to you and just shoots you for being black. You know, your parents are upset, but in America, what can you do? You just, you know, you write about it on Twitter, or you get mad over maybe a week or two, you forget about it. But that family never really forgets about it, and everybody else who was upset, you know, they're not your family, or they don't consider yourself your family. They're just outraged. They just need something to be outraged about. They may be genuinely upset, but there are very few who take action. Let's continue. Mood disorders, familial and genetic influences. Twin studies show the concordance rates are high in identical twins. Severe mood disorders have a strong genetic contribution, so that means your great-great-great-grandpa can have it and it can skip down everybody else but get to you. Or your mom can have it and it gets to you. Or your dad can have it, or both of them can have it and gets to you. Or just your grandma on somebody else's side can get to you, you know. As long as they're direct family members, somehow if there's a linkage, you can possibly have it. Heritability rates are higher for females compared to males to, I don't want to say acquire, but to have mood disorders or thoughts of suicide. So now we're going to get into our biblical section, now that we've discussed the scientific section, so no one can say I'm not biased. I'm totally not biased. I believe that everything is made from God. How am I going to be biased choosing, oh, well, this is not of God? No, everything's of God. Death is of God. You know, Satan was of God. God created Satan. So if God can create Satan, God can create science. God allowed the earthquakes in Haiti to happen. God allowed birth to happen, my birth to happen. God allowed volcanoes to erupt. God allows everything. With that, we're going to get into our Bible text.